Welcome to This Feels Familiar. I'm your host, Minaa B. I'm a therapist, author, and creator of The Siblinghood Theory, and this show explores the themes of belonging, conflict, and relational patterns shaping your life. So let's dive in. Today, we're going to be talking about emotional intimacy. And this is something that is necessary in all of the relationships that you form, not just your romantic relationships. I want you to take a moment to reflect and think about how you show up emotionally in your relationships. When conversations get emotional, do you quickly change the subject? Or when someone tries to get very close to you, do you find yourself pulling away, even putting up a wall so that nobody can really see the full you? When conflict happens, do you shut down completely? Do you go silent on people? Do you hide? I really want you to take a moment to think about these things because it all goes back to emotional intimacy. Even think about times where you start making jokes when you feel yourself being vulnerable or someone is being very emotional or even affectionate with you. You make a joke to lighten the mood. I want you to think about all of these things because it's possible that you are dealing with emotional avoidance and it's keeping you from having the intimate relationships that you actually want. And so, before I dive into today's topic, please take a moment to subscribe to the show so that you do not miss any episodes moving forward. So, I want to take a moment to define what emotional intimacy is because every time I'm doing a workshop or I'm working with a client and I'm talking about intimacy, the first thing people think about is sex, some form of physical intimacy. However, there are different types of intimacy, and today's episode is going to be focusing specifically on emotional intimacy, which is the concept of being known, seen, and accepted for who you really are. It's not about being accepted for the version of you that you show the world or the more polished version of you. It is the real you, the you that has so many fears that you carry, your insecurities, your needs, your desires, your thoughts that don't make sense, your feelings that are complicated. That is what it means to be known. And it requires these three core things that I want you to even write down: vulnerability, presence, and emotional expression. These are three very important things that are necessary if you want your relationships to last for a very long time. Vulnerability is necessary because it means you're willing to be exposed. You're willing to let someone know you care, that you're struggling, or that you need them. It's about openness and not being afraid to be seen. Presence means you're actually there in the conversation, not checking out mentally or shutting down emotionally. Think about a scenario where you go out to dinner with a friend and you're having a conversation with them, whether it be a deep conversation or a light conversation, and they pull their phone out and they're texting. The reality is, for many people, that can feel very jarring. And it can feel like there is a lack of presence in that relationship if I'm trying to hold a conversation with someone and it feels as if they're paying me no attention. So, presence is necessary. It's knowing that I have your full attention. It means that I can show up in this space and you are going to be open with your feelings, but you're also going to show me openness with your body language. And then the last one is emotional expression, which means you can actually name what you're feeling and communicate it. This can look like saying to someone, I'm really frustrated right now. I'm really sad right now. I'm really angry at you right now. But guess what emotional expression also is? It's saying, I love you. It's saying, I miss you. It's saying, we haven't seen each other in so long. Can we set up a time to get together? It's also saying, this is something I really, really like about you. Emotional expression is so important in a relationship because we feel things. And when we are open about the things that we feel, it can deepen intimacy in our relationships. And so, again, vulnerability, presence, and emotional expression are the three things that I want you to be thinking about in your friendships and in your romantic relationships. Ask yourself, do I practice vulnerability? Do I practice presence? And do I also practice emotional expression? But also think about the people that you're in relationship with. Are they practicing those things with you? And as I said earlier, this episode is not really about physical intimacy. It's about the emotional piece. It's about recognizing that intimacy can be formed through truly knowing someone, but that can only come from those three things: vulnerability, presence, and emotional expression. So, why does this matter? Why do we need emotional intimacy? Because I'm sure there is someone out there saying, I don't need to be close to people. I don't need friends. I don't need to open up. And it's probably a protective shield that you're using because you've been hurt. Maybe you experienced neglect. There are so many different reasons why we can feel as if we don't need emotional intimacy. But here's the reality check: you do. In romantic relationships, research shows that couples with high levels of emotional closeness experience greater relationship satisfaction and improved communication. Research by Gottman and Silver found that couples who regularly engage in open and honest communication are significantly more likely to experience higher relationship satisfaction and emotional intimacy. So, without emotional intimacy, romantic relationships can eventually plateau or even deteriorate because there's nothing holding them together except the logistics, except that maybe we have kids together, or except that we live in this apartment and we can't afford to go out on our own, or just the comfort and the familiarity of knowing the person, but also recognizing there is no depth in this relationship anymore. But here's the thing, like I said earlier, this is not just about romantic relationships, because in friendships, emotional intimacy is what separates acquaintances from rich, close friendships. You can have plenty of people you know, but very few people who actually know you. I have a large group of friends, and I always tell people friendship falls on a spectrum. There are a lot of people in my life who know me, and there's so much that they don't know about me because the nature of that relationship doesn't warrant the type of vulnerability that I would maybe give to my best friend. So I'm not saying that I'm not vulnerable in my relationships with people who are just acquaintances, but the reality is I may not be as deep in those relationships or overshare or expose too many parts of myself with those people because I reserve that side of me for the people that I have true deep intimacy with. However, a lot of us are starting from a place of not really having friends or only having acquaintances, and you are searching for richer friendships and deeper friendships. And here's the thing: real friendship requires vulnerability and being seen. Without it, you are going to continue to have surface level friendships that never quite satisfy the need for belonging. And so, if you are somebody who is trying to move from acquaintance to close friend, vulnerability, presence, and emotional expression. Remember those three key things. But it also does not stop at family. Emotional intimacy is not just reserved for friendships and romantic relationships. It actually starts in the family system. And you can have a family and still feel completely isolated if there is no emotional intimacy. You can live in the same house as people and never actually connect with them. This is why I do a lot of the work that I do around sibling relationships in particular, because you can have a sibling that you literally grew up around with, but if you grew up in a home that did not foster connection, attachment, engagement, and togetherness, then you can have a sibling who honestly feels like a stranger because you don't know how to engage in what are those three things: vulnerability, presence, and emotional expression. Emotional intimacy allows family members to support each other, to repair ruptures, and to actually feel like they belong. The research is very clear on this. People with strong emotional intimacy in their relationships report higher life satisfaction, better mental health, and a stronger sense of belonging. And this is the longevity hack a lot of us need to tap into, because you can go work out, you can go to the gym, you can go to the spa, you can take all the supplements and infusions, you can do all of these things. But if your relationships are suffering, if you are struggling with loneliness, if you are consistently in what feels like toxic, emotionally avoidant relationships, you are shortening your lifespan. So, this episode is extremely necessary, and I want you to take a moment to again reflect and maybe write in your journal, do whatever it is that you do to process things, because I really want you to take the time to ask yourself if you are creating the emotionally intimate relationships that you want. Okay, and if you're not, we need to investigate where this emotional avoidance is coming from, because this is the biggest part of the conversation. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum, it develops in your earliest relationships, whether it be with your siblings, peers, or your family. So if you grew up in a home that was unsafe, and maybe you found yourself experiencing a lot of criticism or minimization anytime you expressed your feelings to a parent, that can play a role in why you experience emotional avoidance as an adult. Research shows that childhood emotional neglect is most commonly linked to anxious avoidant attachment styles in adulthood. Because when caregivers aren't emotionally responsive, your ability to trust others gets impacted. And so there could be times where maybe you were very vulnerable and it got weaponized against you. You shared something and it was used against you later. Or there might be times where you have shared something and next thing you know, everybody in the family knows your business, and you told your mom or you told your sister or you told your brother, and now everybody knows because nobody is practicing the art of recognizing when some things need to be sacred information. Instead, people feel like because you're family, they're allowed to just tell your business to everyone. So that can also impact your desire to share and be vulnerable, because you don't want your information to become public and you don't want everybody to know certain things about you. Another thing that can happen is if you are the sibling who was scapegoated and you found that another sibling got better treatment and emotional care and tenderness, and you didn't get that. And so you practice emotional avoidance because you literally grew up in a home where you watched someone else get the thing that you yearned for and desired. And it can create this blueprint that maybe you're not good enough, you aren't smart enough, or you aren't pretty enough. Whatever the story is you told yourself in childhood because you were comparing yourself to your sibling can also now follow you into adulthood. And so these are things I want you to pay attention to. But another thing that is very common is that emotions are sometimes never really discussed at all. And so maybe your family kept things very light and surface, and you learned that depth wasn't valued or even necessary. And I think this is why a lot of people struggle with conflict and with emotional expression, because if you grew up in a home that valued toxic positivity, meaning no matter what is happening, no matter how bad it is, no matter how sad it is, and no matter how hurtful it is, we're only going to focus on good feelings. That's it. We're only going to talk about the good things. We're only allowed to feel good things. And maybe you even heard these platitudes such as everything happens for a reason, or God won't give us more than we can bear. You always heard something that signaled to you that I'm not allowed to feel bad feelings. I can only feel happiness all the time. But here's the thing. You are going to feel bad feelings. That is just the fact. You are a person, you're moving through a world where there's so much that you cannot control, and life is going to throw things your way that's overwhelming and overbearing and hard to digest. And as a result of that, you are going to experience hurt. You're going to experience pain. You're going to be anxious, or you're going to have moments of depression. You're just going to have a lot of different emotions that aren't always great to feel. And if you were taught to suppress that, then how are you going to sit with other people and their stuff? If you can't even sit in your own stuff, it's going to be really hard for you to learn how to support a friend who's in need or a partner who is in need, because you come from maybe a family of people who has told you that everything has to be pleasant and happy and dandy all the time. And if anything is bad, if anybody ever feels bad or feels down, that's something that needs to be fixed versus tended to. There is a difference between trying to fix what people feel and learning to tend to their emotions. Research also shows that childhood emotional abuse has a profound impact on the attachment system. And I do want you guys to understand that emotional neglect is a form of abuse, because you're probably like, Mina, where are you coming from with this emotional abuse stuff? Yes, emotional neglect is abusive. And unfortunately, the consequence of experiencing that can rupture your relationships over time because your nervous system is learning that emotional intimacy is dangerous. Vulnerability can lead to rejection or abandonment or ridicule. And so you learn to avoid it. You learn to stay in your head or to make jokes and become the family mascot, who we like to call it the family clown. Think of the class clown, right? That one kid who every time something happened in school, they were just always making jokes. But has anybody ever asked, like, oh, yo, are you okay? Is everything fine at home? What's going on? And that's often due to people not knowing how to sit with hard stuff. And so when these strategies work and they protect you and they keep you from getting hurt over time, you continue to use them even in adulthood. And those same strategies are preventing you from having the close connections that you actually want. And so I want to walk you through different ways emotional avoidance shows up, and then I'm going to give you some tools on how to change your relationship to emotions, how to change your relationship to vulnerability, and how to change your relationship to presence. And so the first thing is that you over intellectualize your feelings. You can talk about your feelings all day, but only in an abstract, logical way. So that might sound like saying, I understand intellectually that I should be upset about this, but you don't feel it, right? You literally don't feel it. You can analyze what you're feeling without actually experiencing it. And so you might not say, I'm angry or hurt. You might describe the scenario that took place. And you turn your emotions into problems to solve instead of experiences that you have a right to feel. So that is what it looks like to over intellectualize your feelings. You're simply not allowing yourself to just feel the feeling. You're always trying to dissect what happened, and that's okay. Like, understand there's a delicate balance here. You can dissect the things that happen to you, but you also have to be open to feeling the things that happen to you. The second sign is that you shut down during conflict. And so when things get tense, you disappear inwardly, or sometimes you just disappear. Think about the person who, when there's conflict via text, this is why I am not a fan of navigating disagreements via text message. I am that friend who is going to pick up my phone and call you the moment I read something that makes me think you could possibly be upset, or we're just going in a direction where I can tell we're bickering with each other. I'm picking up the phone. And the reason for this is because it is very easy to disappear when you're just texting. And if you are an emotionally avoidant person, or if you're dealing with somebody who's emotionally avoidant, you might notice that this is how they behave when there's conflict. They literally disappear, literally. Like I said, maybe they go ghost for a week, or they disappear internally. And what I mean by that is sometimes they might just give you the silent treatment and just not talk to you. So they're physically around you, but they're not showing up. There is no presence and there is no vulnerability. There is no emotional expression. They go silent, they stop responding, they freeze up, and maybe this is you. This is a form of stonewalling, and it's one of the most effective ways to avoid emotional intimacy because the other person literally can't reach you because you've closed yourself off from them. There's no possible way for them to get close if you refuse to name what it is that you're experiencing, if you refuse to name what they did to you, and if you refuse to do any work around repairing the rupture. If you just want to sit in the rupture without allowing yourself the space to process what happened to you and navigate what you want next, then the conflict is going to continue to remain in the relationship. The third sign is you use humor or deflection to avoid depth. And so when we're talking about family dysfunction, like I said earlier, this person is the family mascot. Whenever things get serious, they make a joke. So when someone shares something vulnerable, let's say this is you, if it's happening to you, you feel like it is jarring on your spirit. Like it literally feels so difficult for you to be in people's stuff with them. And I'm talking about the hard stuff. And so you make a joke. When conversations get too real, when certain circumstances are just too hard to digest, you use humor. And here's the thing, humor is a great defense mechanism. It keeps people laughing so they don't notice you're not actually connecting with them. But over time, people are going to catch on to that. People are going to realize, hey, every time I'm telling you something really deep, you make a joke. Every time I'm trying to talk to you about something that bothers me, you make a joke. Every time I get super personal, you make a joke. So think about it. When I say the key things we need is vulnerability, presence, and emotional expression, if every single time you're vulnerable, every time you're trying to be present, and every time you're emotionally open, somebody is cracking a joke, at some point that gets very exhausting, right? Because you're just like, what do you actually feel like? Do you actually think this is funny? Or are you using humor to avoid? And that's actually what's happening, right? You're trying to keep things light so nobody gets too close to you or you don't have to get too close to other people. That's the third sign. Now, the fourth one is you have difficulty with physical closeness or touch. So you might feel very uncomfortable with physical affection, not because you don't like the person, but because physical closeness requires a kind of vulnerability that emotional avoidance resists. This can look like giving hugs, holding hands, even sex. These can all feel threatening when you're avoiding intimacy, and you might even use distance as a way to control the relationship. So if you stay physically separate, that means you also stay emotionally safe. The fifth sign is that you change the subject when emotions come up. So think about times where someone's sharing something emotional, maybe a loved one is struggling and the conversation is moving towards something really, really vulnerable. You might get very tense and suddenly you're just talking about something completely different. Now, here is what's important. There are times where people can do this and not realize they're doing it because it's an automatic response. Your nervous system senses something very, very uncomfortable about where the conversation is going. So it's redirecting you. Okay. And as a result of that, you may not realize that you don't know how to sit in the heart of really, really deep, intimate conversations because your nervous system is alerting you that this is unfamiliar. And because it's unfamiliar, it feels a little dangerous. It feels a little threatening. And so maybe we should just talk about something different. So that's the fifth sign. Now, the sixth one is you can't share vulnerability even with people you trust. There are people in your life who have proven they're safe. They show up for you. They celebrate your birthday with you. They've been loyal from day one. They've never betrayed you. And still, you can't let them in. You can't tell them what you're struggling with. You can't ask for help. You can't admit you're scared or lonely or overwhelmed. As a therapist, I have had sessions with clients who have told me every single part of their business. I mean, like everything. And there will be times where I could literally be working with a client for over a year who has shared so much with me. And then there's a moment in session where they'll say, I'm too afraid to tell you this because I don't want you to judge me. Right. And so despite all of the sessions we've had together, despite all of the information they know that I know about them, despite all of the consistency, there still is this deep, deep fear that maybe this person is going to judge me. And so I want you to understand that if this is something you struggle with, this is all about your nervous system not trusting vulnerability, even when trust has been earned. Again, your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. And so the idea of opening up can feel hard, especially if you have a wound where maybe you were abandoned by somebody who you felt you could trust, or there was some sort of rupture where you maybe shared things in the past with someone and it was used against you. That can really alter how you perceive trust in a relationship. The next one is you use perfectionism or control to maintain distance. And so you try to keep everything controlled, your home, your appearance, your schedule, your emotions. You have things exactly how you want them. And when someone gets close enough to disrupt that control, you pull away. And here's the thing, perfectionism and control are powerful ways to avoid intimacy because they create this illusion of safety. If I do things XYZ in this manner, then this is what the outcome is going to be. We are so focused on the outcome, right? Because we don't want to be hurt. But if everything is controlled, nothing can surprise you, nothing can hurt you, but nothing can get close to you either. Okay. And so this is why it's important to be open. This is why presence is important. And the last sign is you feel safer alone than connected. And so you prefer literally just being alone than being in relationships, not because you're introverted or antisocial, but because alone feels safer. With people, you have to manage them, you have to listen to them. You also have to, again, practice the vulnerability, the presence, the emotional expression. And that can actually be really exhausting for someone who's not used to it. And so it's easier to say, forget this. I don't need friends anymore. I don't need to date. But there is a cost to this. Humans need connection. And like I said, the biggest longevity hack that you can have for your life, if you want to live a very long, healthy life, it's healthy relationships. It is intimacy. Okay. You are not going to have the quality of life that you truly deserve and the quality of life that can help sustain you long term if you are isolated from people. Okay, so let's jump into some tools that you can be engaging in. You can literally start this week. These are some tools that you can utilize to learn how to be more emotionally intimate in your relationships. And again, I want you to be practicing these tools in all of your relationships, not just the romantic ones, because even if you're single, you should be practicing emotional intimacy with your friends, okay? So the first tool is to practice vulnerability gradually. I'm not saying go to a networking event, meet somebody, and start telling them every single ounce of your business, okay? This is about building a connection slowly. It is built in layers. So start small. Share something mildly vulnerable with someone safe. Not your deepest fear, but just something real. And that can sound like, man, I had a really stressful day today. Or, I'm looking forward to the weekend because this week I had so many things on my plate that has just left me really exhausted, right? That's literally all you have to do. I think the problem is people think being vulnerable means I have to say to someone, you know what, you want to hear the worst thing that happened to me this week? Well, let me tell you detail by detail. It doesn't have to be this way. You can be vulnerable by simply saying to somebody, I'm really stressed out right now. And, I really need a nap. I cannot wait to just go home and take a nap because I've had such an exhausting day. You're being open. You're being emotionally expressive. You're telling somebody that you're exhausted, right? And so I want you to first practice this vulnerability, but also pay attention to how people respond to your vulnerability. Do they listen? Do they judge? Or do they use it against you? Because if they respond with care, then share a little more next time. And slowly over time, you'll build evidence that vulnerability isn't as scary as your nervous system is making it seem. The second tool is to stay present during emotional conversations. When someone is trying to connect with you emotionally, your instinct might be to leave if you are emotionally avoidant. You might shut down, you might again engage in jokes or change the subject. Instead, practice just being present. Practice listening. It's also okay to say to someone, I have no idea how to respond to this in the moment, but I do want you to know that I'm here and I'm listening. Sometimes that's all you have to say. Okay, because there's a lot of research that shows that when we are present during interactions, people report higher levels of emotional connection and satisfaction. So do your best to stay in your body. Literally do some grounding exercises where you can pay attention to your breath, notice your feet on the ground, and just listen. Listen to the other person. It can be uncomfortable at first, but you really want to be teaching your nervous system. This is not something to run from. The third tool is to name your feelings. This is important. Emotional avoidance often happens because you can't identify what you're feeling. If you are angry, just simply say, I am angry. Your brain goes abstract before your body can register emotion. So you need to start developing your emotional vocabulary. And I realize this is something that a lot of people struggle with because we're so used to saying, I'm okay, or I'm fine, especially when you're not fine, right? So you need to learn how to literally name your feelings. But I think this might mean pulling out a dictionary and really trying to find words that really tap into what it is that you're feeling. This is why we have the emotional wheel. You can literally Google the emotional wheel so that you can understand the variety of emotions we all experience. So instead of saying, I'm fine, I really want you to practice naming what you feel. If somebody calls you and says, how are you doing? I want you to practice saying, I'm really exhausted, if that's how you feel. I want you to practice saying, I'm really sad, if that's how you feel. I'm really angry. I'm feeling a little lethargic. I'm feeling a bit depressed right now. I'm feeling a little anxious. I'm feeling quite overwhelmed in the moment. I really need you to train your nervous system to process emotions rather than avoiding it. And the only way we can process emotions is to actually honor that the emotion exists. But if you can't really name what you're feeling, it's going to be hard to do that. The next thing you have to do is tolerate discomfort. You will hear me say this over and over and over again. Feeling discomfort is not synonymous with being unsafe. Okay? Just because you feel uncomfortable, it does not mean your life is in danger. Too often, we feel uncomfortable and we conflate that with a lack of safety. You have to teach yourself that you can feel uncomfortable and be safe at the same time because emotional intimacy is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. It requires you to let your guard down, which is scary. But instead of running from the discomfort, you have to lean into it. So when you feel the urge to shut down, you need to pause and you need to acknowledge the discomfort. And all you have to do is say, I'm feeling really scared right now, right? The reason why this is so important is because I'm feeling scared is not the same thing as I am unsafe. Okay. And this is so important because too often we avoid so many interactions with people or even opportunities because we feel deeply unsafe. But the reality is, you actually probably are safer than you think. So you have to learn to recognize I can be uncomfortable and safe at the same time. And that's what I need to teach my nervous system. The next tool is practice asking for what you need because emotional avoidance often includes never asking for anything. This is why we have so many people who are hyper independent and practicing self sufficiency. And again, that's fine to be self sufficient. It's good to be self sufficient. But if your mindset is, I need to be self sufficient because I don't want to burden people, that's a problem. Right. And so ask for what you need is important because one, it requires vulnerability. It requires trusting that will show up for you. And that can lead to more intimacy. So start practicing with small asks, right? I could use some support right now around X. Can you listen while I talk through this very lighthearted topic? Again, you don't have to ask for the biggest thing in the world if you struggle with asking for help. But I would encourage you to just think of small little tasks where even if the person lets you down, you know you can do it on your own. But the practice here is the asking, right? Now, here's the other layer to it. If you know you have someone in your life who has a pattern of not following through with their word, that probably isn't the person that you should ask anything of. Okay. And so I really want you to remember that too, because I know there's somebody out there saying, but Mina, every time I ask my mom to do this, she lets me down. Well, then if your mom has a pattern of never following through with certain requests, then maybe your mother just is somebody that you can't ask things for. That does not mean you can't ask anybody in the world for help. And this is where the catastrophic thinking comes in or the black and white thinking, because we say, this person fails me, so everybody is going to fail me. Let other people show up for you. And the people who are showing you that they can't show up for you, just recognize that those are the people you will not ask anything of because they're showing you what they can or cannot give. The last thing I want to say is you need to let people see you, not just know about you. So there's a difference between someone knowing facts about you and actually seeing you, right? Because you can know my favorite color is blue. However, when I'm going through something, do you know how to support me in that moment? Because my favorite color is not going to support me when I'm sad. My favorite color is not going to support me when I'm down. Okay, there's other things that you are going to have to know about me, and you're going to have to practice a sense of vulnerability and presence and emotional expression and be willing to hear my emotional expression if you want deepened intimacy with me, right? And so I really want you to be okay with being open. Be open and let people see the real you. Because the more you let yourself be seen, the more connected you'll feel to other people. Emotional avoidance can create this illusion that you are protecting yourself. It creates this illusion that you're keeping yourself safe when vulnerability is feeling dangerous to you. But you have to understand that it's costing you something. It's costing you real, deep intimacy and belonging. The good news here is you can learn emotional intimacy. It doesn't come naturally if you grew up avoiding it, but it is a skill you can develop. And it will be uncomfortable at first. It will be. Your nervous system will resist it, but the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. And so if this episode resonated with you, please rate and subscribe to the show. Subscribe to my newsletter, All the Hard Things, on Substack as well, because the newsletter goes out every Thursday. And I encourage you to order a copy of my book, Owning Our Struggles, if you want to learn how to build healthy community and connection. Here's what I want you to remember from today's episode. Emotional avoidance isn't a character flaw. It is a survival strategy that protected you once, but you don't always need it. You can learn to be vulnerable. You can learn to be seen. And when you do, you'll finally experience the connection you've been craving. Until next time.
I'm not giving up.
I am selling the building.
The final season of FX's The Bear.
The restaurant is flooded.
Everything's either gonna be okay.
No, stop!
Or not.
We are outgunned and we are outmanned, but we have each other.
FX's The Bear, the final season. All episodes now streaming on Disney+.